in this hard time of COVID-19 pandemic. So thanks, Dr. Muralidhar and ICA for inviting me for this brief lecture on cardiopulmonary resuscitation in COVID-19 patients. See, just to brief about CPR in COVID-19, for me, it is a common sense. So we need to use lots of common sense here. We need to get our own thought process in prioritization and how to allocate, how to triage, how to use the existing resources in terms of allocation of the resources. Currently, on the floor of my ICU, I had 88 COVID positive patients who are critically ill. So in NHL city, I have almost more than 220 patients, including the peripheral centers, including the level 1 care, and we have taken some guest houses, and including the which I told, 88 patients on the floor of my ICU, where we segregated some patients into sicker and non-sicker patients with basis of certain their oxygen requirement and their comorbidities, clinical manifestation, and hemodynamics. So we are facing cardiac arrest at least I can tell on an average 2 per day, okay, in our area. Currently, I have near about 14 ventilated patients. Those among them, around 4 patients on prone ventilation. So almost 2 of them are like 6th session of proning. When it comes to therapy, other than the plasma, I have used all the therapy which is available in the world, means including remdesivir and tocilizumab and all those things. Still, lots of patients we are losing depending upon their comorbidity, severity of the illness, rapidity of the progression, and the time they come to hospital in terms of needing the healthcare support and all. Lots of things are happening in terms of why we are losing the patient, and we are figuring out, and we are trying to appropriately putting the protocol in place. So lots of things are happening. So this is just to tell what's happening in my unit. So when it comes to CPR in COVID-19 patients, we need to understand some general prognosis of this COVID-19 patients. Maybe on the COVID-19, I have given almost near about 12 lectures in the pandemic, 12 to 13 lectures, something on pathophysiology, something on multi-organ involvement in COVID-19, AK in COVID-19, hemodynamic support, fluid management in COVID-19. So this is something CPR, I tried to condense hardly to 15 to 20 slides without making it boring. So if you see, when it comes to general prognosis, the numbers which we have, okay, this is the prognostication, this is the incidence, prevalence and all, which included those patients who come into the medical attention. So those were whatever the fate happened in the community. So those patients are not come into this calculation. But on a gross way, we know that 80% of the patient doesn't require any sort of medical care facilities. Okay, they don't even require hospitalization. So those patients, in about 20%, those require hospitalization. Among them, 10 to 20% require really ICU care. So about 3 to 10% require intubation. So on an average mortality, we understood. So in countries like Spain and Italy, the mortality reached up to 8.5. In UK, which reached up to 6.5. But in India, we are somewhere in between 2 to 5% of the mortality. So when it comes to cardiac arrest, so those patients who had some criticality presentation and require ICU admission, about 10 to 15% having some cardiac arrest. This is the data currently available. So reason, we know that the most common reason, they have a severe hypoxemia with a respiratory failure secondary to ARDS. We know that lots of things happened. Okay, L type, H type, depending upon the compliance, depending upon their retaining up of the pulmonary hypoxic vasoconstriction reflex and all those things. But so grossly, hypoxemia secondary to ARDS is one of the cause for refractory hypoxemia is one of the cause for cardiac arrest. So when it comes to cardiac manifestation, so in about 12% of the patients, they presented with a severe myocarditis, okay, with a cardiomyopathy and ventricular arrhythmias, so leading to cardiac arrest. That's been happened, so reported from the Italy. So they got lots of young patients who died with a sudden cardiac arrest. So they evaluated them to be having some sort of myocarditis and ventricular arrhythmias in about 10 to 12%, which can happen. When it comes to shock, okay, so when a patient with a COVID-19 had shock, so this is having few reasons. One is because of severe hypovolemia. See, we know that one of the atypical manifestation of this COVID-19 is severe gastroenteritis. So they can present with a loose motion, and the dictum is COVID-19 ARDS, restrict the fluid. Okay, suppose when a patient present with severe hypovolemia with the background of loose motion as a atypical manifestation, if you restrict the fluid, so they will have a very bad dyselectrolemia, including hypokalemia, hypovolemia, hypoperfusion, which may lead to some sort of hemodynamic instability and cardiac arrest. So when it comes to other reason of the shock is obstructive shock. We know that COVID-19 had a manifestation of procoagulant status in terms of involving like ischemic stroke to the pulmonary embolism to the digital gangrene, what we call it as purpura fulminans. So lots of procoagulant manifestation has been happened with the COVID-19. So that is one of the cause for shock and cardiac arrest, which may happen somewhere up to 17% of the incidence among COVID-19 patients. So other reason for shock is our own sepsis. So in about 10% of the patient, they can have secondary bacterial infection, which is leading to severe sepsis, septic shock, multi-organ involvement. So leading to some sort of unstable hemodynamics and cardiac arrest. So on the other hand, we know that lots of therapies have happened, lots of debates happened, lots of confusion happened in terms of hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, azithromycin. So we learned so the combination of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin can lead to lots of QT prolongation. So patients presented with like cardiac manifestation, including the cardiac arrest, even the therapies like remdesivir, okay, which can have the drug interaction, can have some arrhythmias. Okay, so that is the one drug related cause for the cardiac arrest when it comes to COVID-19. So this is some general aspect, some facts about why the patient with COVID-19 are going to have the cardiac arrest. So where to expect and where patient can have the cardiac arrest. So it may be, see, currently the era is like we are haphazard in the setting, we are burdened with not availability of the bed. So we can expect the cardiac arrest without having a bed for patients who are staying in the ward or maybe in the cohort area. Means like we don't have a proper negative pressure isolation. Definitely in this pandemic, we can't create that also. We are cohorting the patients in common area with appropriate precaution and all. So we might expect cardiac arrest there also in the triage area, because we know that currently hospital window shopping is started. Okay, even in Bangalore also. So there is no availability of the bed. Patient will move from one hospital to other hospital, one hospital to other hospital. By the time they reach ER or triage, today also I got a patient who came to ER and had a cardiac arrest. So this is one area where we can expect the cardiac arrest. Recovery rooms. So even our recovery rooms, high dependency units, step down ICUs, we are using to keep the COVID positive patients, we can expect. And in the proper ICU, no doubt, those who are ventilated and too much critically ill, in the extremes of hemodynamics, we are losing with the cardiac arrest. So these are the areas. So maybe like unfortunately in the coming days, we might expect the cardiac arrest in the community itself. There is no doubt on that. With the burden of COVID patients currently we are handling, the like scenario is very bad. So it is not only COVID related deaths, we have a very bad collateral damage into the healthcare system. So those patients who are having some sort of comorbidities, maybe COPD, elderly patient, like pre-existing cardiac comorbidities, even though they don't have the COVID-19, they will have a cardiac arrest because they might not get appropriate healthcare facility in the needed time. So we might land up with that scenario in the coming days. So this is a brief about where we have to be prepared for managing these patients. So when it comes to some sort of like initial confusion, this is one data published in the Resuscitation journal. So in the long back, 3 months back, so they tried, okay, is this COVID-19 cardiac arrest and giving the CPR is going to have some sort of like spreading the infection. So what they try to address is the procedures are associated with aerosol generation. Even though aerosol is generated, so is it going to cause some sort of infection transmission to the caregivers, and what is the impact of using the PPE in particular scenario when we are giving the like some sort of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The conclusion was they were not able to conclude because it was in the beginning of the generating the data on that. So they concluded, okay, the data included prior to March, so it is uncertain whether chest compression or defibrillation cause aerosol generation or transmission of COVID-19 to rescuers. So there is very limited evidence, okay, because the number of patients they analyzed was also less and number of CPRs happened was also less. They were not able to conclude. So this is just a trigger process, thought process, how this some sort of like cardiac arrest and the therapy related to cardiac arrest has been linked to aerosol generation and that of the like impact on the caregivers. Again, see, when they put into guidelines, AHA made guidelines, okay, UK made guidelines, European guidelines came with some sort of CPR, how to proceed in COVID-19 positive. Most of the data, they originated from some simulator. Okay, this is one study which got published in April 2020. So exploration of strategies to reduce the aerosol spread during chest compression, a simulation and cadaver model. So they concluded early insertion of supraglottic airway device connected to an airway filter before starting chest compression may be beneficial for stop protection during the CPR. So again, I am telling, so these are some stimulus which happened to make it into some sort of guidelines when it comes to giving CPR in COVID-19. So again, this is published in the Resuscitation journal, Resuscitation during COVID-19 pandemic, lesson learned from high fidelity simulation. Okay, so they divided so the area into acute care setup and that of the community hospital. So they created, okay, what are the facilities we need? We need some sort of negative pressure room, isolation, cohorting when it comes to community hospital, physical barrier, okay, use some sort of non-porous sheet to prevent the aerosol generation, limit the staff, it is very important, use the appropriate PPE, even in the first responder, second responder, or maybe code blue provider, means code blue team, they should use the full proper PPE. So when it comes to CPR, so compression only CPR till code blue 2 is going to be like arrived in the acute care hospital. So they can start putting some sort of supraglottic airway devices if it is a community based hospital. So intubation equipment, early intubation by an experienced personnel using video laryngoscope, they advised based on their simulation study. So again, patient transfer, clamp the tracheal tube prior to disconnection. It is one of the practical common sense. So suppose you want to shift the patient from the one bed to other bed, so please clamp the tracheal tube so that you can prevent spillage of the aerosols and that of the spread of infection. Appropriate closed loop communication is very essential. So these are again based on some simulation study. When it comes to real scenario, so some of us may be involved in the peri-arrest scenario and the community or maybe in the ER. So it is very essential, emergency medicine guy should communicate to the receiver end about the the status of the patient, whether the patient is suspected, proven or negative. That's very important. Keep the patient separated from the relatives and the caregivers as much as possible while transport. That is very important. Again, if the patient is put into a van like Omni van, so we don't have a separate chamber for the driver. We need to take a call on like protecting the ambulance driver from the patient compartment. Keep pass overthrow doors and windows tightly shut. Suppose like if the vehicle without isolated driver compartment, so the ventilation must be used. Open the outside air vents in the driver area and turn on the rear exhaust ventilation to the maximum speed. So this will create some sort of negative pressure so that it will prevent the spread of infection, because we need to protect the all involved in the transport of the patient in the peri-arrest area. So this is some thought process we need to keep in mind. So when it comes to proper AHA recommendation, how to proceed with CPR in COVID-19 patient, so we need to understand, answer prepare for these three questions. How to like protect ourselves, okay, reduce the provider exposure, that is very, very important. So prioritize oxygenation and ventilation. So strategize that minimizes the aerosolization, that we have to consider those procedure, those interventions which are going to have a minimal aerosol production, we have to consider them. Again, consider the resuscitation appropriateness. So I'll come to that. So these are the different three headings. We need to understand how to proceed like providing the resuscitation when a patient had cardiac arrest with a suspected or confirmed COVID-19. So reduce the provider exposure, don PPE before entering the room or scene, limit the personnel, consider using mechanical CPR device if available, communicate COVID-19 status to any new providers, because the things may get haphazard. Okay, some newcomer may come and he might jump on giving the resuscitation and chest compression. Please communicate to them what is the COVID status of the patient if a newcomer entered into the scene of resuscitation. So prioritize oxygenation and ventilation strategies with a lower aerosolization risk. Use HEPA filter if available for all ventilation. Intubate early with cuffed endotracheal tube if possible, and connect to mechanical ventilator when able. Engage the intubator with highest chance of first pass success. So it's very difficult always. Currently I am running the show with one anesthesia second year resident, one cardiothoracic surgeon, or some neurosurgeon. So sometimes we might not get this experience always in the odd hours and all, but prioritize this kind of like access for the some sort of experience when you consider intubating the patient. Pause chest compression to intubate. Consider use of video laryngoscope if available. We need some training in using this. Before intubation, use a bag mask device with a HEPA filter and a tight seal in it. It's very important. Use the filter always. Whatever the circuit, use the filter. So for adults, consider passive oxygenation with a non-rebreathing face mask as an alternative to bag mask ventilation for short duration. If intubation is delayed, use supraglottic airway. Minimize disconnection of the circuits. If at all worst scenario you need to disconnect, clamp the endotracheal tube. So consider resuscitation appropriateness. This is very, very important. You need to understand. So with the limited resources, okay, availability, with the limited manpower, with the limited infrastructure, everyone is overstretched. We need to understand what are the goals of our therapy. Okay, we have to prioritize which patient need to be given a resuscitation in terms of when they have a cardiac arrest. Means suppose I'll give an example. Patient is elderly with the back. I have a patient currently. So he is a case of CLL. Okay, he is around 62 years. So my statement is very clear. If he arrest, we are not going to prioritize for the giving chest compression in him, because he's in the maintenance phase of CLL. Okay, not completed the therapy. Unfortunately, he landed with COVID-19. He's on mechanical ventilator requiring some 80% of the oxygen. So on the other hand, I have a 26-year male patient without any comorbidities. So he's an engineering student. He's requiring 60% of FiO2 with a 12 PEEP in a prone ventilation. Then I will prioritize this patient to give the CPR. So we need to be very clear in terms of allocation of the resources, okay, prioritization, whom to give, and what are our goals of the care. That we need to clarify with our like care providing team, including the nursing staff, including the respiratory therapist, and that of our junior doctors who are going to do duties in the odd hours. So this I am not going to stress because it is a readily available. Okay, everywhere we have to remember this, the BLS AHA guidelines. Don PPE, limit the personnel. So whatever I spoken, everything has been incorporated into BLS and that of the ACLS protocol. There is not much changed, except again I am telling whatever we discussed in the 3 steps. Okay, personal protection, prioritization, limit the aerosol. Wherever, that's why in the beginning only I told it is a common sense when we go for the CPR, that we need to understand and we have to prioritize all those things in our mind. Don't be panic, don't be rush. Okay, I advise my resident, if you don't have a PPE, don't come to the scene at all. Okay, don't come, don't attempt any sort of like heroism while giving the resuscitation, because it's very, very important for personal protection in this era of pandemic. So again, if the patient is having in hospital cardiac arrest, suppose if he is in the pre-arrest phase, if information about potential COVID-19 has not been provided, because patient is in the ward. Okay, currently we have some non-COVID ward, COVID ward, but there is a mid zone where we send the sample and we are waiting for the report. Okay, we have some clinical and radiological suspicion, but the first report came negative, second report came negative. So we are in inconclusive state whether they are COVID positive or negative. So if in suspected patient with respiratory symptom, initial assessment, okay, in the pre-arrest period should be done from the 6 feet. Okay, this is a special scenario you need to remember. Minimize the contact until a face mask is on the patient. It's very important. Put a face mask on the patient. If not suspected, we have to follow the appropriate standard PPE precaution. If a nasal cannula is in place, so suppose if the patient is already having nasal cannula or high flow nasal cannula, put a face mask on the patient before jump on assessing in the pre-arrest area. Again, suspected or confirmed COVID-19 patient in the hospital setting, address advanced care directive and goal of care. Again, I am repeating, if the patient is currently what level of comorbidities in terms of his age, in terms of his existing illness, okay, we have to analyze, we have to get an idea on the goal of care when we assess the patient in the pre-arrest period. Closely monitor for signs and symptoms of clinical deterioration to minimize the need for emergency intubation that put patients and providers at risk. So we have to upfrontly sometimes need intubating the patients in the pre-arrest period. Consider proactively moving the patient to negative pressure isolation. Unfortunately, everywhere it's been full, so we might not get a negative pressure isolation in the pre-arrest patient. Close the door when possible to prevent airborne contamination of adjacent indoor space. So intubate the patient at the time of cardiac arrest. If the patient is already intubated, okay, then he had a cardiac arrest, consider leaving the patient on a mechanical ventilator with HEPA filter. See, we used to take them on AMBU. Don't ever make an attempt to take them on AMBU. If a patient on mechanical ventilator had arrest, just keep them on the ventilator with the HEPA filter intact. Adjust the ventilator settings to allow the asynchronous ventilation. So consider these advices. Increase the FiO2 to 100% without disconnecting. Use either pressure or volume control ventilation. Limit the pressure and tidal volume to make it generate of 6 ml, at least 6 ml per kg of the tidal volume for adult. Adjust the trigger to make it off, because to avoid the ventilator from auto triggering, switch it off of this trigger like setup. Adjust the respiratory rate somewhere around 10 breaths per minute for adults. Assess the need to adjust the PEEP as per their like need and that of the hemodynamics during the CPR in an intubated patient who had a cardiac arrest in floor. So adjust alarm to deliver full breaths with asynchronous chest compression. So increase the pressure limit, because if you don't increase, it will keep on alarming. In a pressure controlled ventilation, it may not allow the adequate tidal volume to generate. Ensure endotracheal tube or tracheostomy tube and ventilator circuit security to prevent the unplanned extubation and disconnection. It's very, very important. If ROSC has been achieved, then we can consider the appropriate ventilator setting according to the patient condition. So again, this is something I just for curiosity I put. So a need for prone positioning CPR guidance for intubated and non-intubated patients during COVID-19. So this has been again published in the major journal, that is Resuscitation. What the advice I told, 4 patients in my ICU are on prone ventilation at least for 16 to 24 hours. Okay, we are giving the extended prone ventilation. So they are requiring somewhere like oxygenation of around 60 to 80% with a PEEP of some 10 to 12. So suppose if the patient in a prone position get arrested, we are like currently we are providing awake prone ventilation also. We know that there is a protocol called CARP protocol for like patients who doesn't require intubation. We are advising them for awake proning, like 30 to 120 minutes. Go for proning, go for propped up position, go for supine, left lateral and right lateral alternatively. So for patients with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 who are in prone position without advanced airway, this is why I told awake proning, attempt to place in the supine position for continued resuscitation. If they don't have advanced airway, please make an attempt to supine them. Okay, prone position with an advanced airway, it may be reasonable to avoid turning the patient to supine position unless able to do so without the risk of equipment disconnection or aerosolization. It's very important. Suppose if the patient is having endotracheal tube and if we had a cardiac arrest, okay, in a hurry, in an like emergency, if you try to make them supine immediately, we need a manpower. Understand, we need a manpower. So proning to supine, supining to prone is not easy. We need a proper manpower. Suppose if you consider that, so there might be a chance of disconnection and aerosol generation. So we have to weigh that risk and benefit. If unable to safely transition patient from supine position from the prone, place the defibrillator pads in the anterior posterior position and provide CPR with patient remaining in the prone with the hands in the standard position over the T7 to T10 vertebral bodies. This is something which came up with some sort of like midway, some suggestion from the resuscitation journal, which we can consider in our day-to-day practice also when a patient is on prone ventilation and had a cardiac arrest. Again, post ROSC care, nothing much difference. Okay, so you optimize the ventilation, oxygenation, hemodynamics and all, do a 12 ECG. Okay, you consider whether to go for therapeutic hypothermia or some sort of coronary intervention. No much change even from the AHA when it comes to post ROSC care in COVID-19 patients also. Again, this is something, okay, we know that family presence during cardiopulmonary resuscitation, we know that COVID-19 is having a lots of impact psychologically on the care provider and the family, because sometimes you have to see elderly patient who got COVID-19 is in a hospital and the rest of the family members are like home quarantine. They are also COVID positive. So suppose if the elderly or a patient who is in hospital had a cardiac arrest, what to do? So there are some recommendations, but definitely these things we are not able to follow in Indian scenario to allow them to come and visit, because any of they are like positive, COVID positive, allow them with the patient while giving the CPR, or show them the CPR on some sort of digital like mobile or smartphone platform, or like some sort of allowing the pet during the resuscitation and all. In Indian scenario, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult at this pandemic. We are not able to practice all these things. This is one data when I was searching outcome of the patients who received CPR. This is the data again from the Wuhan, China. So they are the beginners. So like we don't know the reliability of this data. So 136 patients had CPR attempted. Of these, it was initially successful with the ROSC achievement in 18 patients. 4 survived at least 30 days. 1 had a favorable neurological outcome. So if you see this data, so intact brain with a total outcome benefit when you give CPR, it's hardly about 0.7 to 0.8%. Okay, so we have to prioritize definitely at this moment whom to give the CPR, considering the personal protection. So with this, I'll conclude. So any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you, Harish, for that excellent presentation. Lovely points you have brought out. Now, may I request Radhika and Dr. Jayashree Sood to question the panelists depending upon the chat box and QA requirements. And you may also comment, or you may, if you have your own questions, you may please proceed.
Dr. Puri has a lot of questions.
Yes,
so,
yes.
If I may begin, Dr. Jayashree?
Yes, of course, Radhika, definitely.
First, I would like to make a comment that I was part of the vision trial of Dr. Deveru, and we contributed 2,000 patients to him out of the 15,000.
Yes.
And we did troponin T. So, Dr. Puri, that was a specific kit brought from the US, and we didn't have it in St. John's. So it was troponin T which was measured. And it was measured for 3 days on our 2,000 patients. And the other thing we looked at was also triple low and the outcome of triple low.
Yeah.
Now the questions to you are, Dr. Suresh, troponin level monitoring